Hi, and welcome to the Breakthrough Emotional Eating Podcast. My name is Kristen Jones, and thank you so much for joining me this week. I am starting a series, and the series is going to be Back to Basics, the breakthrough method of overcoming emotional eating and losing weight. So, in this series, and I'm going to have we're going to address a different component of my program that I use and encourage people to use to overcome emotional eating and to lose weight at the same time. Because we know that losing weight as an emotional eater can be difficult because of the issues with deprivation and restriction and all of the mental stuff that goes along with that. And so what I do is I present all of these, these pillars of my program. And I definitely give people autonomy to decide what's going to work for them and what's not going to work for them. I think all of these things together work really well. But if people say, you know what, that's just not something for me, okay, we can try that and we can see if that just doesn't jive with you. Everybody's different. So I don't think that a program you're not entering prison. It's not like, when you work with me, it's like it's my way or the highway. Because for some people, there are certain things that just don't work. And so, but all of these things that I'm going to talk about over the course of the next 5 weeks are all going to be important pillars of my coaching and how I coach people. And they are they're kind of the bread and butter of losing weight, but there's also this whole other component that we go into as well, and we'll talk about that. But these components that we're going to be talking about, these pillars that we're going to be talking about, are all going to be the pillars that will help you not only start to address your emotional eating, but start you losing weight in the process that you are going through to kind of understand and address your emotional eating. So today's topic number 1, is going to be all about meal planning. Now, I want to be super, super clear that meal planning is not meal tracking. Okay? And meal planning, I don't need you to plan your meals for the whole week. I'm talking one day at a time. But there is a scientific and brain-based reason for why planning your meals and following through on planning your meals is so important. And it's so important as an emotional eater, but it's also important for anyone who wants to develop a new habit, a new skill, a new routine, a new process that is going to get them to move towards an ultimate goal that they have. And I'm going to talk about that today. So this is just not like, oh, you need to meal plan because that's just what everybody says to do. These things, the things that I'm going to talk about today, are all backed by science. They're all backed by brain research. And I'm going to give you specific reasons as to why why meal planning is so very valuable and is so important. And I'm going to tell you, it's something that so many people push back on, and that's okay. Totally can push back on it. And let me know how that goes. I always let people, hey, if you don't think you want to do that, that's totally okay. But if we're not having success, then we need to look at the things that you're choosing not to do, why you're choosing not to do them, and then let's just try and see if it works. And 9 times out of 10, it does. So the first thing I always like to talk about is something that my first business coach and longtime mentor, Dave Smith, taught me. And it was, what gets planned is what gets done. If we don't plan for anything, nothing gets done. So making a plan is really, really important. And that's important in weight loss. It's important in your work, it's in your job, it's important in housekeeping, it's important in just going about your day. Planning things, you're much more productive when you plan things, because when you have a plan, there's a reason why it works. It's because it does something to your brain. The other reason it's important is that when you're an emotional eater, your eating is not driven by physiological needs. It's not driven by the fact that you're hungry. When you're an emotional eater, you eat for psychological and mental reasons. And so understanding how your brain works and why your brain tells you, directs you to eat when you don't need to, but it does it for other reasons. Why it does that, understanding that. The first step into changing a behavior is awareness. And part of awareness is understanding why something happens. And so we have to understand how our brain works. Understanding your brain is so important when it comes to making any sort of change, any sort of behavior change. And weight loss is a behavior change. The end result of weight loss is a change in your behavior, and a change in your pattern, and a change in your habits. And I think that most weight loss programs neglect looking at how the brain works. And I think that is that they're making surface changes and they're not going deep. And y'all, we go deep here. So we have a number of different things that we need to look at when it comes to why planning your meals ahead of time, why that is so effective when it comes to you sticking to a meal plan and actually executing it and then getting the results that you actually want, which in this case would be weight loss and a management of your emotional eating. So, number one, the first reason why meal planning is so effective and why it is, and when I say meal planning, I really mean like having a structure or having any sort of plan. So it could be meal planning, it could be writing down a to-do list, whatever, but it's giving your brain structure. So the first reason why it's so important is that your brain craves efficiency. So our brain's number one job is to conserve energy and to keep us alive. And planning and organizing reduces the amount of mental energy that is spent on deciding, well, what do I do next? What's my next step? Where am I going? What am I doing? All of those things, if we don't have those things laid out, our brain spends a lot of mental energy worrying about that or wondering about that. Because if we don't have a plan, it's going to be like, well, we're always planning for the worst case scenario, which is what our brain does automatically. We're always in that, like, I don't know what's coming next. So that creates a lot of anxiety, which is a result of all that mental energy being spent on what's next. And so that is a poor use of your time and of your mental energy. And when we apply it to eating and we reduce that mental energy is really that food noise that people talk about all the time. And it's that chatter. And it's those thoughts of like, well, what am I going to eat next? What's my next meal coming? When we plan, that goes away because we don't have to, we've already made the plan. We made the plan. That's what we're committing to. And we've moved on to something else. Our brain doesn't have to keep going back and wondering, well, what's the next thing? What are we going to have next? Because we've already made a decision. Also, when you plan, you are not engaging in that constant debating of, well, which choice am I going to make? What are we going to do next? And that lowers your decision fatigue. We have to make over 20,000 decisions in a day. I mean, decisions so much as I'm going to pick this piece of paper up. I'm going to, something as small as, what's this pen doing here? Which lipstick color am I going to put on? I mean, there's just so many decisions that we make. And so we have to, we by the end of the day, we're done. We're tired. We've made so many decisions. I don't want to make any more decisions. Well, that can derail us when it comes to your food. So you need to make decisions ahead of time. And then your decision fatigue, you don't have to fight yourself on, okay, let me make the decision and let me make the right decision and now let me stick to it. When they've already been made ahead of time, that's done. So you've made the decision earlier in the day. Now your brain can focus on more immediate needs and immediate decisions that need your attention. Second thing is it reduces cognitive load. So that means that we have a working memory. Our working memory in our prefrontal cortex, front part of our brain, and it can only hold a few pieces of information at a time. So without a plan, your brain wastes energy trying to remember tasks, details, things that you said to yourself, oh my gosh, that's really important, I want to remember that. Disappears if we don't write it down. If we don't put it down on paper, then we spend all of this time trying to make decisions, but then at the same time trying to remember what was the decision I needed to make. Now I can't remember what that was. So we have to give ourselves that opportunity to be able to not be so bogged down by all of the decisions that we have to make and that energy that we're putting into it. So if food has always been what's top of mind for you, your cognitive load at work and with food is like compounded. It's so big, it's so heavy. And your brain, if it's always been on food, your brain's going to keep thinking it needs to be on food. And so planning and getting it out of your brain where you don't have to think about it anymore takes all that load off. So now your mental focus and your cognitive load can be directed towards things, frankly, that really matter. Oh, I don't know, like you keeping your job, you doing what you need to do in your job, you having a conversation with your spouse or with your kid that's meaningful because you're able to focus on just that thing. When you write things down using lists and following routines, it takes away the burden of having to remember everything, having to be on top of it. And it frees up the mental bandwidth for you to be creative, for you to problem solve, and for you to focus. And so instead of spending all this time trying to remember the things that I want to remember, write them down. Write them down. And then you can refer back. You can do what you need to do with that list. And in this case, when it comes to meal planning, you don't have to think about what you're going to have for lunch because it's already been written down. Decision's already been made. Now I just have to show up and I just have to eat it. That's it. And then I can get right back to what I need to do again after lunch when we have something else that comes up that we need to work on. So again, mental load, it gets taken off. We don't have all of that heaviness around what am I going to eat, and that just focuses our minds. We're able to focus on things that really matter. Third thing is it provides predictability and safety. Remember, back at number one, our brain's objective is to keep us alive and to keep us safe and to keep us having everything that we need. Remember that Maslow's hierarchy of needs? All those needs, that's our brain's first and foremost. And part of that is survival. And survival, food goes along with survival. So the brain doesn't like uncertainty. It doesn't like things that are unfamiliar. When we don't know what's coming, the amygdala, that portion of our brain that is responsible for recognizing threats and then kind of deciding what we're going to do about those threats, that becomes activated and it creates stress and anxiety. And that stress and anxiety then promotes us to be able to make irrational decisions about, oh my gosh, I'm going to starve. I need to eat something and it needs to be this pan of brownies, whatever. But that's what happens is when we don't know what's coming, we go into this worst case scenario scarcity mindset. And the scarcity mindset tells us, oh my gosh, we have to panic. We have to figure out what we're going to do. And so when to relate this to food, when you wake up in the morning and you're like, I really need to be good today. Like I need to follow my plan today, but you don't make a plan. You're just like, I need to be good today. Your brain doesn't know what good means. It just means it just means that, and if you say, I need to be good today, so I need to cut back on food. Well, cutting back on food tells your brain there's not going to be food available. Well, that's going to alert the threat center that we talked about. That's going to alert that threat center to be like, this is not good. We don't know where our next meal is coming from. And now they want to cut back on food. well, your brain is going to become this crazed, oh my gosh, we need to make sure that we have food. We need to make sure that we get food. And you'll make some irrational, very poor decisions for yourself. When you have a clear plan, it signals to your brain, I know what's coming next. We got this. We know where our next meal is coming from. We can be calm. We can be peaceful. We can allow our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic, for reasoning, and for focus. We can allow that to relax and do its job, and it can function at its best. It doesn't need to be in panic mode. So just by making those lists, planning, having that routine, it reminds us, not only reminds our brain that we have everything we need, we don't need to panic, food's always available, everything's available to us, we have everything we need, and nobody needs to stress. Once our brain knows that and there's a plan and it knows what's coming, then all is good and we can move about our day. And that's where we can really then see some changes in things that we need, changes in how we approach things. Number 4, so many of us emotionally eat, because we love that little hit of a dopamine that we get when we have something really high sugar, really sweet, really, forbidden. We can get dopamine in other ways, and we can get dopamine from making these lists and making these plans, because what our brain thrives on, what our bodies thrives on as humans, is that dopamine hit. But there are ways of getting dopamine that don't involve sugar, that don't involve food. And part of that is when we make a plan and we're able to check off what we've done, like, okay, I made my bed, check. I did my journaling, check. All of those things are all rewards that we give to our brain, and we get that little bitty hit of dopamine, and it feels really good. And what that does is it signals to our brain, oh wait, we made a plan and we followed through and we got a dopamine hit. We want to do that more often. We want to keep doing that because that's what feels right. And so the more you can buy into the making of a plan, acknowledging when you follow through, and giving yourself that little pat on the back, that's a dopamine hit. That will then encourage you to continue that process, to continue to do the same thing, to build that muscle and have that habit become something so ingrained and so easy and so built in that you will then continue to do it, and you'll get the result that you wanted, and your brain will also thank you for it, because it will be very calm and it'll be very relaxed, and it will have the dopamine that it needs, and it won't be from escalating and having something higher in sugar, or more of a risk, or any of those things that we do when we need to up our game with our dopamine. So it definitely builds upon itself, and the habits then that we're creating become a part of who we are and become a part of our routine, and we only benefit from those things. Number 5 is it aligns with how habits are built. When we make plans and we make routines, that is creating new neural pathways, new thought plans, new thoughts, new ideas, new beliefs. And if we believe that something is going to be positive and beneficial for us, we will keep on doing it. And so it creates those planned positive behaviors and positive actions that then serve our lives, and we continue to do them. And if those planned positive things are around food and around eating and around making our plans for what our day is going to look like, that is just encouraging us to continue to do that, and continuing to make that a habit, continuing to make our good eating a habit, continuing to make following through on what we say we're going to do a habit. That's more dopamine, and everybody's happy. So it really results in you making your plans, sticking to them, losing the weight you want, and then keeping it off and feeling accomplished. That gives you another dopamine hit. So all of these things, very natural ways of getting dopamine, as opposed to using the chemicals in food to get your dopamine. Now you're doing it because you're actually accomplishing things, and you're feeling really good about it. It's a win-win. So In summary, plans result in less stress, provide more clarity for your day, especially meal planning in the morning, meal planning for the day. Less stress, more clarity for the day. It creates peace and calm that can help you sidestep emotional eating. When you make lists, there's less cognitive impact on your brain. You have more energy for more meaningful work. It stops the obsessive food thoughts, that food chatter, and it allows you to feel in abundance. You move away from scarcity and from lack. And then finally, when you follow through on anything, that is the ultimate in a dopamine hit that you can get that isn't from food. That is, it reinforces the positive outcomes that you are creating because you are the one doing the thing that's getting you that dopamine hit. And that then serves to maintain your motivation, to keep you to continue to move in this positive direction and get you your ultimate goal, which in this case would be to have a managed control of your emotional eating and for you to be at the weight that you want. So all of those things all come about because of this one little habit. It's one little idea of planning your meals and following through on it. And again, it's not just because I think it's a good idea. There is brain-based research and fact that will tell you that that process is in alignment with your brain, that your brain wants it. It wants to be told what to do. It wants to have structure. It wants to have focus. So now is the time for you to give it to you, for you to give it to your brain and then get the results that you want to have, which in this case would be a understanding and a control of your emotional eating and losing the weight that you want to lose. And that's ultimately what my job as a coach is to guide you through that process and to help you decide what's going to be best for you. And I always allow my clients to make the decisions that are going to be best for them because they know themselves so much better than I do. But if something's not working, wanting to do something and needing to do something are two very different things. And so we get to decide what that looks like for each person. And that's the really exciting part is for me, it's important that clients have autonomy. They get to make their own decisions, but they also get to use facts to make those decisions and not make them out of emotion and not just because they don't want to do something. We try to use as many facts as we can because ultimately I want to use those facts to get them what they want and to make them and to have them be their happiest and their most proud of themselves that they can be. So I hope this explanation as to why meal planning is so important. I hope this has helped. I hope it's something that you will try. And again, meal planning is just writing down. You don't have to write down the exact amounts of food, but you do need to write down what are you saying that you want to be eating? And you don't eat anything that's not on that list. And that you honor yourself and you give yourself the gift of those things because they're in alignment with what you want and what your end result is. So next week, we are going to be talking about another aspect. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there's another aspect of my coaching program. And we will just take one at a time and unravel and unwind those pillars. And by the time we're done with this series, you will absolutely know everything there is to know about how I help people lose weight. And then you'll get to make the decision of, is this something that I think might work for me? And in the meantime, I'm going to have a special guest come on to next week's podcast, and she will share her story about how it was a fit for her. And I look forward to you being able to hear from her. And here's the other thing. This is the crazy part. She lost all of her weight by merely listening to the podcast. So she is going to be my guest next week. So I look forward to you coming back and hearing that episode and learning a ton from her. All right. Take care. Have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week.